eyes in the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you.
Welcome to Deception Detection Radio. I'm Kay.
And I'm Chad.
We pray you all had a blessed week. I'm going to go ahead and say tonight's opening prayer and then right into it. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you and thank you for all your blessings. Let your words be our words tonight, Lord. Guide this broadcast. Help to open our ears, Father, to hear what we need to hear and to help us to understand the things that are just happening so much in this world around us today. Still the hearts of people that are listening. And if the ones that are listening, some of them haven't been saved, Father, let them hear your voice through tonight's broadcast. Let them come to you and be saved. I ask you this, Father, in Jesus' holy and mighty name. Amen.
Hi, I'm Chad. I hope you know who I am. Tonight I'm flying solo. Kay will return next week. I'd like to welcome my special guest, Josh Peck, to Deception Detection. Welcome, Josh. I want to tell the wonderful audience about yourself tonight.
Well, hi, Chad. It's good to be here talking to you. For those who might not be familiar with me or my work, my name's Josh Peck. I've written a number of books. I think maybe 11 or 12 altogether. I have a lot of like mini books. I used to my ministry name used to be Mini Study Ministry, because I used to write, like when I was first starting out, I used to write these really short, like 50-page books, and I wrote about 5 of those and then put them together in an anthology. So I have those. My very first book was called Disclosure. That one is mainly for if there's somebody that is just discovering all this, fringe Christian stuff for the first time. It kind of, or if somebody has a friend or a family member that they want to introduce to this community, that kind of helps. That book is for that purpose mainly. But I guess I'm most known for well, the 2 books that I'm most known for are Quantum Creation and Cherubim-Chariots. I also host my own show called the Sharpening Report, and I've been doing that for a couple of years. It's just a basic video interview show on YouTube. And now my wife and I work at SkyWatch TV, and we host a show there called Into the Multiverse, which is basically looking at quantum physics through a biblical lens, and that's what my 2 main books, Quantum Creation, Cherubim-Chariots, plus the one that I'm working on with Tom Horn now. That's basically what those are about. It's making quantum physics accessible to the lay audience. I very much consider myself a layman, but one of the most surprising things that I've found out is you don't really have to be a genius or have a degree or really have any scientific training to understand a lot of this quantum physics stuff. A lot of times when it's given to the public, it's made to sound more complicated than it really needs to be. And I'm not saying that I don't mean to, belittle the science or anything. I mean, it's an important discipline, but it is accessible for everybody, at least the big picture stuff. So, but especially for Christians. So that's what I try to do.
Right on, man. And also, I believe also right now you guys have a special over at SkyWatch where they can get your two of your books for $29.95.
Yes, yeah, and people should take advantage of that, because that's a better deal than I offer on my own website on sharpeningreport.com. I charge $19.99. The retail value is $19.99 per book, but Tom's able to work it out to be able to offer it for $29.95. And actually, it helps me out more if people order it from SkyWatch. Anyway, so if people are interested, they should definitely go for that deal, and I wouldn't want anyone to feel like they're like cheating me out of $10 or anything by doing that. It actually, just the way the finances work and the business side of everything, that does actually end up helping me out more. So skywatchtvstore.com, people can look that up, or they can go to sharpeningreport.com. I have a link at the bottom of the homepage for that as well.
Right on, man. Yeah, I've been following you for quite some time now. Big fan of the Sharpening Report, and I'm really digging the Into the Multiverse with you and your wife, Christina Peck. I think it's an awesome show.
Oh, awesome. Thanks. I appreciate that.
So, with that said, let's dive into some of your books, and let's get also. I also like that last video that you put out about the fourth dimension and the brain.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That was a really good one as well.
Yeah, that article. Well, from time to time, Tom will send me and some of the other staff at Skywatch articles, and if it's something quantum physics based, he'll send it to me, or usually it's like me and Sharon and Chris Putnam and a couple others, but and every now and then I'll write an article of my own based on whatever he sends. So he sent me that, thought I'd be interested in it, which of course I was, and for the audience that probably has no idea what we're talking about. The article was basically that science may have discovered a fourth dimension to the brain, a fourth spatial dimension to the human brain, which is amazing to think about. But like most scientific articles, it was written in a way that is completely like you can't understand it. It's like reading a different language. So what I try to do is, I've been studying this stuff for years now, so I've kind of learned the lingo, and I almost, it's almost like I'm more of a translator than anything else to try to take what they're saying in their complicated science lingo and then just put it in terms that people can understand, people like me. So I did that. That's like my whole deal. So I did that with that article, and people can find it on Skywatch, or they can find it at my blog, joshpeckdisclosure.blogspot.com. But yeah, that was really fascinating.
Yeah, and I've always been of the understanding, or the belief that basically these bodies that we inhabit are basically like avatars, and that
Yeah,
our consciousness and our soul that is how it can reside in this three-dimensional space. So it's like it's a vessel for our soul and our consciousness to exist here. And
yeah.
and when you started talking about that, I was like, hey, he's on it. It's like that really ties in with the whole thing about the holographic universe and Michael Talbot and all that. And I was just like, yeah, okay.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, and there actually might be biblical precedents for that too. Ephesians 2, I believe it's verses 5 and 6. It talks about how Jesus sees us seated with him in heaven already.
Hmm.
So from Jesus' perspective, God in the flesh, yet still outside of time and space, as he sees fit. He sees us already seated with him. So now there's a mind bender. We're already there in a sense. We're here, but in a sense, when we're taken out of the dimensions of space and time, and my best guess would be that happens when we get our new bodies, or the new heaven and the earth might have something to do with that. But at some point, we're going to be taken into that eternal state,
Hmm.
and and according to Jesus, we're already there outside of time. So that blows my mind.
Well, also, I mean, that's the thing is he could also see demons whenever he encountered them. That's the thing is he didn't just look at a person and say that person's acting weird, that he must be possessed. He could literally see the demons inside of them.
Yeah, yeah, and that's interesting too, because even though he physically he was just a man, it was still he was still God in the flesh. Jesus is still God. And I've often wondered about that too. Like where are the limits of his humanity? Which I would guess, since it's Jesus, there are no limits. But also, like because we can't see generally, we can't see demons or fallen angels or extra dimensional beings because we don't have that perspective. Now, sometimes if they come into our space, then we can see them. If they manifest, we can see them. But I can't see into any higher dimensions, and none of us really can. And I know that there's like New Agers that would disagree with me on that, but even if
Yeah,
even
I
if
know exactly what you're saying. Even if you were to actually see one of these things, your mind couldn't process it. It's because
exactly.
we are dealing with a three-dimensional mind trying
Yep.
to perceive and comprehend something of the fourth, fifth, or whatever dimension it is. You can't process it. You can't even comprehend it.
Exactly. All we would be able to see is something else three-dimensional. And I mean, we even have examples of that in the Bible, like the book of Ezekiel. He saw this amazing thing, this extra-dimensional construct of God's throne. Yet he still saw it in three dimensions. But that's because he was Ezekiel was just a three-dimensional being, a human being, and that's all that he was able to process. But that's why you see all those weird things, like the angels were kind of melded together in weird ways and everything. And that's actually something called extra dimensional unfolding. Like physics actually has a term for that. Of course, they would never look at the Bible and say that's what that is, but that it is. And that's why when John saw the same angels in heaven in the book of Revelation, they were separate. They weren't melded together in this weird, because they weren't being unfolded into three dimensions. They were in their natural habitat. So John saw them, but John still would have a three-dimensional perspective. So even though he was witnessing an extra dimensional environment, he could still only process it as three-dimensional. And I think that might account for a lot of the really weird things that when we read in the Bible that don't really make sense. Like in Ezekiel, that's actually a good example of the wheels and how it says
You're talking about the
that
Ophanims, correct?
yeah, the Ophanim, and that's the class of angels. So and that's the weird thing. There's actually a class of angel that looks like a big wheel with eyes all around it. We don't hear about that stuff in Sunday
Mm-mm.
school.
No.
But there's this weird verse that said that where Ezekiel said that the spirits of the cherubim, which were the actual angels with the eagle's head and ox and all that, the spirits of the cherubim were in the wheels, were in the Ophanim. And for a long time I couldn't really figure out what that was all about. But I think what might be going on is the Ophanim might actually be a part of the cherubim, like an actual part of their body somehow. Or it would be like actually a really good example to help the audience kind of wrap their heads around all this is Flatland. And I use this all the time. Every physicist that I've ever read or looked into that talks about extra dimensions uses Flatland as a thought exercise because it's just the best one that has ever been created to help explain what a fourth dimension of space would be like, because we can't. And we're not talking, when we talk about the fourth dimension in this context, we're not talking about time. In this context, time is more of a property of space, and so that's why usually I say fourth spatial dimension, just so I don't confuse people. But anyway, Flatland is it's based on a novella from the 1800s, and it's basically a thought exercise. Imagine there's a two-dimensional universe, and it doesn't even have to be very big. It could just be the size of your tabletop. Or, imagine there's a two-dimensional universe that they have the x and y axis, but no z, no up or down. So the inhabitants of this universe would be called Flatlanders. Now you could be looking over Flatland, and they wouldn't be able to see you, because there's no up or down. So if you wanted to show yourself to a Flatlander, how would you be able to do that as a three-dimensional being? If you put your finger in Flatland, all they're going to see is a circle. Well, actually, they'll see a line in front of them, but they'll be able to tell. They can examine it and see that it's a circular shape, but they'll put together that there's a circle there in front of them. Now, if you put two fingers in Flatland, they're going to see two separate entities, two separate circles. They would have no way of knowing that they're actually the same thing, connected to one being. So basically, that type of thought exercise can help us get our heads around a fourth spatial dimension. What if an object of four spatial dimensions, like a hypersphere, which is it's just a sphere but with an extra spatial dimension? What if that were to breach our space? Well, instead of seeing a circle, we would see a three-dimensional sphere appear before us, and and as it left, it would shrink and disappear. So that same kind of that same kind of reasoning can help get our heads around some of this stuff, and that might be what's going on with Ezekiel, and why the spirits of the cherubim were in the Ophanim, and why Ezekiel even said that or made note. Like, it's such a weird thing, and then he doesn't explain it. I think that they might actually be just two parts of the same thing, of the same entity. Now, I don't know for sure, because there are other parts in there that make it sound like the Ophanim and the cherubim are two totally separate things, and they're not at all part of it. So I don't know, but it's definitely mind blowing, and that kind of stuff really gets me excited about the Bible, especially Old Testament stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, man. It's like whenever what is it, the Path of the Immortals came out, the Tom Horn and Chris Putnam. I mean, I was just blown away at the way that they came about it, and they're like, look, what you perceive and what you think of as angels, these are not all angels. Angels is just a classification. It's like there are many different kind of entities, and
Yes.
that's the thing, is each one has its own job function. It's like you got the cherubims, you got the archangels, you got your regular angels, you got the ophanims, you got the seraphims. Just start naming them off and what their job functions are. And it's just like, that is the best description I've ever seen, where somebody just took that and just laid it out like that.
Yeah, me too. And actually, I think in one of my sharpening report, when I had Chris Putnam on, he talked about that too. I think he was the one that wrote that part, but I know both he and Tom, like, obviously they agree on that, as do I. And yeah, it's mind blowing, because it's, again, stuff that we're never going to hear in Sunday school, and we're never going to hear in church. There might be a couple churches out there that will touch on this stuff, but generally, I mean, this was, maybe not the quantum physics stuff, but just the weird angelic. I mean, this was just basic knowledge, in like the days of Ezekiel. He knew exactly what he was seeing. Now, I don't think he understood all the quantum physics aspects of any of it, but he knew what he was seeing. Like, he knew that this was something from something heavenly, and angelic. He wasn't confused. And the reason that I bring that up is because the ancient alien crowd will use Ezekiel's vision to try to say that he saw a spaceship and he saw aliens or something. And there is so much wrong with that with that theory. And a big argument that they'll use is, well, he was just so blown away by what he was seeing, he was just trying to describe it, and he did the best he could with what he had. And this is actually something that Dr. Michael Heiser, he's a brilliant guy, and just really good
Yes.
guy, but he was the one that opened me up to this, that there are words in Hebrew for things like window or porthole, or things that the ancient aliens will say, well, the glowing amber or whatever, it could have been a propulsion system, or they try to redefine everything. But there are words in Hebrew that Ezekiel would have had access to, where he would be able to describe it like that. Because they'll say, like, the eyes of the wheels, the eyes are like, well, those are just windows. Those were windows. But there, in cherubim-chariots, I made that point as well, and I actually wrote out what the Hebrew word for window is. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I actually wrote what it was. He could have easily just used that word, but he didn't. He saw eyes, so he wrote eyes.
Yeah. Good stuff, man. Good stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Oh yeah, to say the least. That's the thing, is only pastor that I've actually heard that talks about any of this kind of stuff is I believe his name is Pastor Lawson. That's the only one I've actually even seen talking in the pulpit about stuff like this.
Oh, that's cool. I haven't heard of him. I'll have to look him up.
Yeah. All right, Josh. So you want to talk about both your books, or you want to just talk about cherubim-chariots, or where how you want to go?
Oh, we could talk about all of them. I could, yeah. The first book, the first main one was Quantum Creation. That one's mainly, that's just like the basics of quantum physics and applying it to the Bible. And you know, I think usually when people hear that for the first time, they would assume that that's got to be a stretch. You know, what would quantum physics have anything to do with the Bible? But it actually does. The term extra dimensional is really synonymous with the term spiritual. Now, no physicist in the world will probably agree with that because most aren't Christians. Some are, but most aren't. But when you really look at what they're studying and what they're trying to figure out mathematically and through science, um, it's spiritual existence. It's what we would consider spiritual existence. Now, usually in church, we're told or we're led to believe that heaven and angels and spiritual entities and all this stuff, they're kind of ethereal, not really made of anything, kind of like wispy, but actually it's the complete opposite. It's like super physical. They have imagine how much more physical we are than what like a two-dimensional being would be. A two-dimensional being would barely have any physicality to them. They'd have a little bit, but barely any compared to us. We would be, super physical uh, from their perspective. So imagine how much more even just a fourth dimensional being would be. And I speculate in the book that what Ezekiel saw, because there's at least I mentioned the extra dimensional unfolding thing. I should probably explain that a little bit more. One method, it goes back to the flatland example. So say you have a cube and you want to show a flatlander a cube. How would you be able to do that? If you put the cube on flatland, all he's going to be able to perceive is a square. And he doesn't have access to much of the information of the actual cube. He only has one side. So what you can do is you can unfold the cube, and if you do that, then a cube is essentially at 6 planes. So you would have 6 squares, actually in the shape of a cross, which is interesting. But and the flatlander will have access to all the information of the cube, but he's not going to be able to put together in his mind the actual shape of the cube. He'll just have access to everything that the cube's made of. So the same idea, you just add one dimension for us. So what about a hypercube, a cube of 4 spatial dimensions? If it's unfolded into our 3 dimensions of space, that's called a tesseract, and it kind of looks like a cross with 2 extra arms, because we're adding 2 directions, so you have 2 more. From cube to squares, it's 6 squares. From hypercube to regular cube, it'd be 8 cubes. So now we would have all the information about the hypercube, but we're never going to be able to really process like what shape that would be. Now, if you do that again, imagine taking the tesseract, the cross with the 2 extra arms, and unfolding it again, like if you wanted to present a hypercube to a 2-dimensional being. So you unfold it again. Now you're going to start to have, or you could start to have, planes that are overlapping. So some of the squares may overlap with others. So I speculate in the book because of that, and I think that's what's happening in Ezekiel. I think that's why the angels, they share one leg and their wings are fused together and all these really weird things. I think that's why. I think there's at least a double extra dimensional unfolding. So I speculate in the book that these beings, these cherubim, are at least 5th dimensional, but probably 6th or higher. So that there's nothing really theological about that. I just think it's interesting. But I mean, there's no way anyone's going to convince me that Ezekiel knew so much about quantum physics that he just wrote it like that. And to me, that's part of why I think this stuff can be really important, because Ezekiel wrote that 2,600 years ago. He would not have had any clue about extra dimensions or quantum physics or extra dimensional unfolding. I mean, that's stuff that we've only started talking about since like the 90s, you know. So it's still relatively new. Yet that's the exact effect that we read in the scriptures of what you would expect from a being of extra dimensions coming into our space. You would start to see some of that weird fusing and stuff. So so that's cherubim-chariots. That's part of it anyway. A lot of what that book goes into, the subtitle is Exploring the Extra Dimensional Hypothesis. And basically what that is, the whole ancient aliens crowd, they mostly subscribe to the extraterrestrial hypothesis, the ETH, which states that UFOs and their pilots are from another planet. That's just basically, I mean, there's more to it, but that's basically what it is. The extra dimensional hypothesis says that UFOs and their pilots are from a higher dimension. And I think that one's actually more biblical because, again, extra dimensional and spiritual are basically the same thing. So when we say extra dimensional being, we may as well be saying angel or fallen angel or anything like that. So what got me interested in that was I was noticing a lot of UFO reports. People are reporting things that I don't think they would know to lie about and describe in this way. I mean, maybe one or two out there would, but not on this scale. People are reporting UFOs that are solid, yet they change shape and color, and sometimes they appear in more than one place at one time, but it's still the same thing, and they'll converge back together. It's totally extra dimension. It's exactly what you would expect from something extra dimensional breaching our 3 dimensions of space. And I mean, there's some videos of this. I don't know how many, if any of them are authentic, because it's people fake those things all the time. So I have no idea. But there are some that are really convincing, and some of them I just don't know that a lot of people would even know to fake it that way, But what I I'm more inclined to believe somebody if they say that they've had a UFO experience or encounter or something like that. I don't with a lot of things I'm skeptical by nature, but with that I'm more inclined to just believe somebody rather than assume that they're lying to me and pass them off. My wife actually saw a UFO when she was a teenager, and so I'm more inclined, but that was kind of the motivation for that was, well, people are describing, and I don't think I don't think they know it, but or at least the majority, they're describing extra dimensional objects. So is there some biblical precedence for why this is happening? So that's what that whole book is about. In the book, I dedicated a whole chapter to Ezekiel's vision, really breaking it down and explaining the whole extra dimensional unfolding thing and getting into all that. But that's basically what that book was all about. So that's quantum creation and cherubim-chariots.
Yeah, and that's the thing is a lot of people that really haven't studied physics, like, me and you, that's the thing is me and you, I think we just do it as a hobby.
Yeah.
We're not trying to make a living at it or anything, but I mean, once you really look into it, it's like when you start looking at molecules like, oxygen, hydrogen, and so on, it's all about how the atoms are arranged that create those molecules. And that's the thing is that if you were to take the building blocks that make molecules like atoms, if you take an atom and you blow it up the size of say, a football field, I mean, the only actual matter is only going to be about the size of a dime.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
and that,
exactly.
that was mind blowing when I found that out. And that's the thing is that we can pass through solid matter. If you hit the right frequency or, vibrate fast enough, you can actually walk through any solid matter.
Yep.
So that's the thing is that, I believe that these interdimensional beings, that's how they are passing through the dimensions same way, basically like a frequency or vibrating at a certain
Yeah, because they're most likely they're not made of the same stuff that we are, or at least not in the way that we might think. Because really, and this is mind blowing too. This is like a fun little physics thing. You actually really can't touch anything. Anything that you think you're touching, all it is it's electrons repelling one another. They're not actually physically touching. You need like a particle collider for for you need something with that much power to actually have electrons slam into each other. But if you touch your table or whatever, all that is it's just the electrons from the table repelling the electrons from your hand, and kind of like magnets. It's sort of the same deal. So yeah, if there was a way to turn that that effect off, you would be able to just go through anything. So I mean, it's a good thing that it's set up that way, but it's weird to think about that. Like when you put your clothes on, your clothes aren't actually touching you. When you take a shower, the water's not actually touching you. It's weird to think about. You actually never really touch anything. Um, Crazy stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely wild, man. All right, I've got to go here with you because you're going to be able to hang with me on this. The D-Wave Quantum Computing Company.
Oh yeah, I was I'm getting ready for a presentation that I'm going to be giving at the prophecy or what is it, Rocky Mountain International Prophecy Conference, coming up in about a month. And for those out there interested, tickets are sold out, but you can go to prophecywatchers.com and sign up for the live streaming. Um, but I'm preparing a presentation for that called the quantum future, and part of that is quantum computing, because I think that is going to be like the next big world changing thing. I mean, the last one was probably the internet. That's like the most recent one that absolutely changed the world. I think the next one's going to be quantum computing. The D wave, it's interesting. As advanced as it is, it's nowhere near what quantum computing can actually do once they really perfect it. Imagine how regular computers used to be. You take up a full room and it could barely add. And like look how we look at our laptops and cell phones and things now. Um, I actually the full potential of what a quantum computer will be able to do once they actually like get it, and the D wave is working.
Oh yeah, there's three of them. That's the thing is there's three of
Yeah.
them, and like you said, that's the thing is if we were to take all the computers on the planet and have them all synced up and working together and gave them an equation, it would take if you gave them like one equation that might take them 20,000 years to crack, this D-wave system can actually crack it in a matter of seconds.
Oh yeah, actually, and I heard this one physicist say that if you take if you took the entire universe, and the entire universe was a computer based on what how normal computers work, it still wouldn't have anywhere close to the processing power that the D wave or just any quantum computer has. And
Yeah.
that's mind blowing. Like the whole universe. Like if you could somehow
Did you hear them when they were actually talking about that these computers like D-Wave are actually reaching into other dimensions and
yes.
pulling information out of other dimensions and assembling it here? I was just like, wow.
Yeah, and that's the worrisome part, and that's the part that kind of makes me think maybe this isn't such a good idea. Because well, what quantum computers work on this principle in quantum physics called quantum entanglement, which is it's really mysterious. No one really knows quite how it works, But basically, you can have if there are like let's say there are two photons that are entangled, quantum entangled. You could have one photon on one end of the universe and one photon on the other end of the universe, and they can communicate with each other instantaneously,
Hmm.
which is supposed to be impossible because, I mean, that's beyond faster than the speed of light.
Yeah.
Um, and the problem with faster than light speeds is you run into all sorts of paradoxes like infinite mass and even time travel and stuff. Just all these really weird things, but somehow they're able to do it. and no one really has a good theory as to how that's possible. And I'm not, I have an idea. I don't know how valid it is, and I have no way of proving it. But what kind of got me, and then I'll get back to the quantum computing thing. But what kind of got me thinking about this was, back to the flatland thing. What if there was a flatland physicist that wanted to know what his reality was made of? And so, he looks through a flatland, I don't know, not microscope. You need something more powerful than that, but something to look at particles. What would the particles look like to him? They would look like tiny circles. Well, if you add a dimension, what do we see when we look at particles? We see tiny spheres. So that makes me wonder if maybe those spheres are just a three-dimensional slice of something else. Maybe particles, it's not just three-dimensional. Maybe there is extra dimensionality to them, which means there would be for us, which kind of goes back to the four-dimensional brain thing that we were talking about at the top of the show. So the only way that I can even figure or process in my head how quantum entanglement might work are, what if photons are just three-dimensional slices of something bigger, and they're getting and receiving information at the same time, just like if I put two fingers in flatland, and my fingers are still pumping blood at the same time, but they're not necessarily, to a flatlander it might look like that my fingers are communicating with one another, but maybe but the reality is something bigger is communicating with both of them at the same time. My body is. So maybe photons, maybe that's the story. Maybe that's what's going on. And I like I said, I have no way to prove that. It's just an idea. But if that's true, then quantum entanglement is an extra dimensional phenomenon. And if they're using that phenomenon to have these computers process different things, they're essentially tapping into extra dimensions to run these computers. So that's where they're getting their information, and their information is being pulled from there, if it's using quantum entanglement. Now, that to us is going to be like incredible instantaneous processing speeds. You would never have to wait for an email, or you would never have to wait for your computer to boot up again. But it's accessing that because of an extra dimensional phenomena. That could be really, really dangerous.
Yeah,
Because
pulling information from another dimension, what could go wrong? It's like, I don't think that they would ever send us any, horrible information like, Tower of Babel instructions or anything like that. No, would never happen.
Yeah. Oh, and speaking of which, something that they're working on now, gravitons are just by nature, gravitons are able to, well, the working theory is, and I believe that this is true, I believe this is right, gravitons are able to escape into other dimensions. They can just free flow through dimensions, and right now that's the leading theory as to why gravity, the force of gravity, is so much weaker than the other forces. It only takes the power of one kitchen magnet to lift up a paperclip that the whole Earth is pulling down on. Gravity is really, really weak compared to the other three forces. And that's always been a big, ever since the days of Einstein, that's been a really big question. Why is that? So right now, the leading theory is that gravitons are actually, and this goes into M theory, or superstring theory, that basically gravitons aren't attached to our three-dimensional, they called it a brain, short for membrane. They're comprised, or they're made from what is called a closed loop, or a closed string. So these closed strings, everything else is attached. The they're open-ended strings, so the open ends of the strings are attached to the brain. But gravitons are different. They're a closed string, so they can flow freely through the dimensions. That actually might be what dark matter is, because right now, I'm going off on like 1,000 different tangents, but well, I'll get to the dark matter thing in a second. But anyway, there's this, and this is part of my presentation too. There's a documentary that the popular physicist Brian Greene is hosting, and in it he talks about, and this documentary is years old, like this is old news, but in that documentary he's talking about how if physicists can manipulate gravitons, then what they're looking at trying to do is use gravitons as a type of binary code, or like a binary message to send into a higher dimension, then set up a detector and see if anything comes back.
Yeah, I've actually heard that before, that they could detect the gravitons and that they could communicate between dimensions.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's kind of like out of that movie Interstellar. But and since that they were just able to detect gravity waves not that long ago, and they did it again, I guess, recently. That's just one step closer, to them being able to do this. Now they might already be able to do this, and they just haven't told us yet. I mean, physics is big on like keeping things quiet for months or years before they release it. They actually, in 2012, when the Higgs boson was announced that they had discovered it and it was a big deal. They actually knew about that for and they even admitted it. They knew about that for 6 months at least before then, but everything with quantum physics goes based on statistics, and there's this whole probability factor, and I explained it in the new book, but yeah, basically, so there are things that they know now, even now, and they haven't released yet. Like supposedly sometime this summer, um, the LHC has detected some really weird things that might be a new particle. We're supposed to find out more about that, like really any day now. It's supposed to be like in July or something. They want to make an announcement, so we'll see. It might not be anything, but they might actually have something. But anyway, with the detection of gravity waves, that brings them the next step is going to be to replicate that in the lab, to create gravity waves in the lab to be able to detect. Then they're going to, at some point, they're going to have to learn how, like, actually discover officially gravitons. And that's what I'm wondering, if that's what this announcement is going to be, that they finally detected a graviton, like a single, like, gravity particle, which would be that would be bigger than the Higgs boson, because then that's actual, proof that their theory about gravity is right, at least up till now, and they can start developing uh, better better quantum theories for gravity. But anyway, whenever they can actually detect it, it's not going to be long before they're going to start manipulating it, just like how they manipulate protons at the LHC now by smashing them together. And uh, so I don't think, if they really do want to do this whole graviton communication system thing, I don't think we're too far from that. But the last time I tried to guess, I thought maybe a few years, but now I didn't think that they would detect gravity waves this fast. So it might even be sooner than that. But I don't know. We're in for a really weird future.
Yeah, and I was also thinking about the whole D-Wave thing, that if we can pull information out of the other dimensions using our computers, can they do the same thing to us?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that there's a case to be made that that might be what Revelation 9 is all about, the key to the bottomless pit. And it does say in there that, the an angel has the key to the bottomless pit, and he's given permission basically to use it and open the abyss. So a lot of people, when they read that, they say, see, CERN can't have anything to do with that, or it's not anything we're doing it. It's an angel doing it. But if you go back to the beginning of the book of Revelation, you read that Jesus is the one that holds the keys. So he's allowing this to happen. Now, if we think about in our personal lives, whenever we disobey God, or whenever and I mean, I've had personal experiences with this years and years ago, before I was into any of this stuff. I used to be a big time New Ager,
Yeah,
and I I was doing things against God, and I should have known better. But at any time that we do stuff like that, we're inviting the enemy in. We're giving the enemy basically legal right to come into our lives and mess with us and stuff.
right.
So that might be with them trying to open doorways to higher dimensions, and that's not just science fiction or speculation. That's right off of their
Yeah,
website.
they've admitted it. They've come right out and said it. And that's the thing, is this also ties into Ecclesiastes 10:8.
Yeah,
That if you go poking your fingers in the holes, you may be bitten by a serpent.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's a really good point. Yeah, so I mean they're inviting this stuff in. So it's not I don't think it's going to be that, the LHC itself is going to open the abyss, but I think just by them trying to do the stuff that they're doing, which it's basically sorcery when they're trying to communicate with higher dimensions, at that point, that's what it is. But I think that it's going to reach a point where God is going to say, well, they basically they've dug their own graves, so and allow the angel to open the abyss. I think that's
Yeah,
what's going to do it.
and some of the things that have been happening over there at CERN, I mean, it's you can't even write this stuff. I mean, like the whole thing about the weasel getting fried, and
Oh
it's
yeah.
like so. I was like, oh my goodness. And then I know you've heard that what was it? Some of the scientists were actually saying that whenever they had the LHC fired up, that they were seeing these entities appearing.
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah, and I never really know what to do with that because there was one story that was getting this is why it's so important for all of us, the audience and everybody to learn how to research stuff out because it's really easy. There was a story that was getting passed around, and this isn't to belittle anyone. I mean, I even had Tom even emailed me and asked me if it was true. So I mean, anybody can wonder about this stuff. But there was this story getting passed around Facebook that the headline was, "I'm a physicist at CERN and we've done something really bad," or something like that. And it's basically supposed, the way that it was being represented is that it was a first-hand account of a physicist at CERN that they did some experiment at a higher energy and it opened a door and people are disappearing and the army's coming. It's just this whole big what it was originally. It was just a short story. It was a short story series posted on Reddit that somebody was just writing. When it was originally written, it was never meant to fool anybody or trick anybody into thinking that it was real. It was just some guy wanted to write a short story and that was what he wrote. But somebody came across that, and I don't know if whoever did it, if they did it intentionally or what, but they came across it and started sharing it and saying that it was real, and so a lot of people, because CERN is really mysterious and the whole field of quantum physics is really mysterious, so it's easy for people to think that that might be possible, and it's not. That like that whole story is so just scientifically inaccurate. Like there's just no, even in the wildest of expectations or speculations, I mean, you wouldn't have that kind of effect. It just simply doesn't work that way. But
And besides, the truth is always much stranger. You look at their
yeah.
logo and the 666 in the
Oh
logo,
yeah.
the
Yeah.
the Queen of Sheba or whatever and stuff outside, and
Yep.
it's like, wow.
Yeah, there's a ton of stuff, and that's actually what my whole me and Tom's whole new book. It should be out in a couple of months, but that's what that whole book is about. Is looking at all these things, all these different things being said about CERN, and seeing what's valid and what isn't, because there is definitely some weird stuff going on there. Like I don't doubt that at all.
And,
Like
and it's not just CERN. There's things that are there by CERN. Like, did you see? I know you caught that opening of the Gothard Tunnel. The
oh yeah, yeah.
My goodness, was there? How did you catch all that imagery? It's like I couldn't even keep up
It's
with it.
yeah, it was weird and demonic, and it's really yeah, it's abominable. It's crazy, but yeah, and I think that kind of weird stuff keeps happening around there because there's just that's the spirit around there. That's all the stuff that they're doing, and I'm not saying that they're in. I don't think that just the average run of the mill physicist that's working at CERN, I don't think they have ill intentions. I think that they're essentially being duped. Now, I don't at the very least the enemy is doing stuff and controlling things, and so it might just strictly be a spiritual inspirational thing that people are doing these experiments and they think that it's because they're trying to learn more about the universe or whatever, but really it's the enemy putting those motivations in their heart. It could just be that, or what it might be is and there's a little evidence for this, at least there might be a type of a type of shadow organization that's actually running things at CERN that most people, like the physicist, everybody working there, wouldn't know. They wouldn't have any clue about it. But there might be like a behind the scenes, like an organization that's actually running these things for a strictly Luciferian agenda, and they know exactly what they're doing. Now, I don't know I don't know which scenario is right. At the very least, it's the
Well, it
enemy.
also says that if we continue to go against God and get into certain kinds of things, that He will eventually give us over to a reprobate mind.
Exactly. Yep. And I think that's what's happening there, and that's why we keep seeing all these things. And I mean, there are things that they should release that you would think they would want to, but I think that they're keeping certain things to themselves, like the whole science of quantum field theory. That's like essential for everything, and that's a big part of the next book that I'm putting out with Tom. Is it would probably be, I think we have like 10 minutes left. It'd probably be too much to really
Oh, go on, get into it.
here, but
Go.
basically, like and I'm gonna, I'll definitely be covering this during the presentation in July at Colorado. But basically, right now, most people, their view or their idea of reality is particle physics, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there's a lot more to the story. We tend to think that everything is made of particles, and maybe particles are made of strings, and strings, no one really knows what they're made of, but everything's basically made of something until you just get to the point where it's just not made of anything. And how could that be possible? I remember when I was in sixth grade, this was the first I ever even heard of quarks, because back then that was like, that was, string theory was just starting to be studied, and I don't even think M theory was a thing yet. But in science class we learned about quarks, and uh, the teacher basically said, and quarks, they're not really made of anything. And he had no other explanation, because I was like, what, how could it exist then if it's not? That makes no sense. That is ridiculous. And it sounded so stupid to me. But and it is stupid, but it's because they're leaving out this whole quantum field theory thing. It's all based around energy. What reality is, what a particle is, the only thing a particle is, it's a fluctuation in a quantum field, which that probably sounds like Chinese to most people listening. But if you think fields are, and this took me a while to get my head around too. So if you're out there listening to this and it's not making any sense, that's totally that's fine. There's just no way to explain it in 5 or 10 minutes. But basically, we could think of like the gravitational field. That's a field that permeates all space, it's everywhere. Or the Higgs field. The gravitational field, you could think of a field as sort of like a set of values. Like every point in space has a certain value to it. So for gravity, the closer you are to Earth, the higher those values are going to be. The further away you are, they're going to be less. Or like the magnetic field, the closer you are to a magnet, the values of those points in space are going to be higher. So and fields permeate everything. That's what reality is. It's fields. And there's either 57 or 58 right now known quantum fields. Every elementary particle, and that just basically means any particle that isn't made out of anything. Like an atom is made out of quarks, and there's a whole and electrons, and there's a whole nucleus to it. So an atom is not an elementary particle. It's just a particle. But elementary particles are where you can't break it down anymore. So like a quark. So every elementary particle has an associated field. So there's a neutrino field. There's a Higgs field, and every field has an associated particle. So like the electromagnetic field, that's photons. So basically, what a particle actually is, it's not this little, solid piece of matter like we tend to kind of think of it as. It's really just a three-dimensional fluctuation in a quantum field. Usually when we think of like if you picture a graph in your head, or like a chart where there's a spike in it. Well, that's exactly what a particle is. It's a spike in energy in a quantum field, except it's not two-dimensional like on a piece of paper where you just see a spike. It fluctuates in all areas at once, so it expands out into a sphere. That's why particles are, spherical. So essentially, it's all just different vibrating energies and things. And Einstein was able to show that through E equals mc squared. And basically what that equation is it's a conversion rate for energy and mass. So E energy equals the mass times the speed of light squared. So there's a lot of energy packed into a little bit of matter. And if there was a way to unlock it, you could like destroy a city block with an apple. Anyway, so but that's basically what reality is. That's what quantum field theory. That's how the LHC works. Most people don't really think about it, but how do you get a Higgs boson from two protons when, for one thing, a Higgs boson is an elementary particle, so it isn't made of anything. The Higgs boson isn't hiding in the protons or anything. How does that work? It's all based on quantum field theory, which actually right now is the most accurate science in existence. It's so accurate. I forget the exact equation. I have it in the book, but it's the most accurate science ever. Well, what happens is when they collide two protons in the LHC, that explosion or that energy actually ripples into other quantum fields, because these fields take up the same space. So this energy, like from the two proton collisions, will shake the other fields, say like the Higgs field, and add energy to that field. That's what creates, because again, a particle is just a fluctuation. It's just a spike of energy in a quantum field. That's how you get a Higgs boson out of a proton collision. That's what they're doing at CERN. These all these fields, they exist everywhere in all places at all times and everything. So it's kind of like if you play a piano in one room and you can kind of hear it resonate from a piano in another room. It's a little like that. So yeah, that energy just goes into other fields, and that's how they're able to detect other new and exotic particles.
That's a good description too about the pianos.
Yeah, that actually is from Sean Carroll. I can't take credit for that. He's a brilliant physicist. He's definitely not a Christian at all. He has a video on YouTube that God is not a good theory or something like that. So that part of him I'm not in love with, but just from a science, he's one of like two or three physicists out there that actually will talk about quantum field theory publicly, but that actually explains it in a way that people like you and I and anybody else listening can understand. So that I for those reasons he's brilliant, but yeah, so that was his analogy.
We'll keep him in our prayers.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
Well, Josh, I just want to tell you, we appreciate you coming on here and taking the time out of your busy schedule. Like I said, I know that you're super duper busy over there at SkyWatch, and we appreciate everything that you and the SkyWatch team and your wife Christina are doing over there. We totally love you guys. You know that. And
Oh, thank you. We love you guys too.
and did you want to say the closing prayer and take us out?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Heavenly Father, thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk and reason together, and we want to pray for everybody who's listening that we're not given a spirit of fear. We know that your word tells us that we're not given a spirit of fear, so we know we don't have to fear these things, but we should still be informed, because your word also says that I'm blanking. The lack of knowledge, and you'll perish if you have lack of knowledge or something. Forgive me for forgetting. That's a Peck paraphrase, but we just want to thank you for informing us, and I just pray that this information gets out to those who need it, and that if there was anything that I said that isn't correct, that that you would correct it and show people the truth. And we just thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to get together and talk like this. And we love you so much, Father. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Well, Josh, we appreciate it again, and you have a wonderful evening. Thank you, audience, for tuning in, and we love you guys. We appreciate y'all tuning in. Check us out, and like I said, check out the Into the Universe, watch SkyWatch TV, and definitely check out his books. Good night, guys. In the sky, gazing far into the night, I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light